the reason why I wanted to start with this game, and the reason why I said and started this episode with football is simple, is because when you look at both teams, the Dallas Cowboys and the Baltimore Ravens, their ways to get to the ultimate goal, ultimately winning week 3, both of those teams use completely different methods. And for one team, you find success one way, and for the other team, they find success the other way. Where the frustration has been for Baltimore this year is while they've had the answers to the test, while they've had success doing one thing, it felt like these first 2 weeks going into week 3, they've tried to be, you know that student where maybe you were that student. If you were, shouts out to you. But you know that student that you have the answers to the test? Hell, your teacher, if you don't want to say cheating, your teacher says it's an open book test, open notes quiz. And there's that one student that says, you know what, I'm not gonna use my notes. I'm not gonna use the book. It's like, bro, you have tools that are allotted to you. Yet there's always that one. I don't need the notes. I don't need the book. I'm gonna do off straight mental. And that's the same student that fails or get a low grade. That's what the Baltimore Ravens have been doing the first 2 weeks. The fabric of the Ravens has been smash mouth football, run the ball, solid defense. That has, let me actually back up. It's a little bit more than solid defense. It's been historically great defense. That has been the calling card for their organization. It got them 2 Super Bowls, essentially. And we're talking about a Ravens team that not only was the league leader in rushing yards last year, but they were the league leader in rushing yards by a wide margin. So you can understand the fans' perspective when you bring in a person like Derrick Henry, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer if he hung up the cleats today, one of the greatest running backs the league has ever seen, one of the most physically dominant running backs the league has ever seen. And while, yes, he is not the same young Derrick Henry, he still has juice in the tank. So you'd think a team that led the league in rushing, has Lamar Jackson, who is a dangerous rusher and dangerous in the play run pass option, you'd think that they would essentially use the running game to their advantage. But like that kid that the teacher says it's an open note quiz and they say, I don't need the book. They said, you know what, we're not going to, John Harbaugh come out, we're not going to run Derrick Henry 30 times. He's done that. Okay. And there's no coincidence that the Baltimore Ravens have went into week 3 0-2. Now, I'm not saying not running the ball has been their biggest Achilles. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Their defense hasn't been good, and their offensive line, especially the interior of their offensive line, has not been good. But they have not done themselves favors. They abandoned the run extremely quickly. They did that in the AFC Championship. They did that in week 1 against the Chiefs. They did that in week 2 against the Raiders. And the thing is, they did not have to abandon the run. And when they went to the run, it worked. Maybe, Derrick Henry not going 50-yard runs, but it was still working. They just abandoned it. It was the kid that did not want to use his notes in an open note quiz. So going into week 3, it was, I said it, obviously no one's listening to me, but I said it. I said, there's a difference between 3-0 or 2-0, 1-2, and 0-2. The feelings are different. You usually don't like to say that this is a must-win game in week 3, but going up against the Cowboys, the Baltimore Ravens was in a extremely much-win situation. And while you can say the first 2 games, Baltimore obviously had chances to win. They had a chance to win, and if it wasn't for a big toe, they could have beat the Chiefs. They had a 10-point lead against the Raiders. Okay. But they still finished those games with a 0 in the win column. So I say all that to say, forgive me if I didn't have the most confidence in them. I thought they were going to win because desperation calls on a lot of things. Desperation a lot of times makes you play much better. And just like I said, there's a difference between 2-0, 1-2, or 2-0, 1-1, and 0-2. Where there's much difference between 3-0, 1-3, or 1-2, and 0-3, which we'll talk about in a second. But Baltimore did exactly what they should have been doing. That is using the notes that the teacher said that you can use. Let me put it in layman's terms for you. And why I started this episode with saying that football is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. You have Lamar Jackson. You have Derrick Henry. You have Justice Hill. You have an offense that is predicated around the run. Use it. And you see what happened. The Baltimore Ravens, while yes, 28-25 doesn't look like a blowout, but it was 28-6 before Baltimore started to do what Baltimore usually does, and that is blow double-digit leads. Now, it didn't, Lamar Jackson came back at the end to seal the deal with a run for a first down under 2 minutes, but this is pretty much me going the long way home when I could have just took a shortcut. The shortcut is the Baltimore Ravens can be a very good team. Their offensive line is getting better. It's not all the way there, but it's getting better. Their defense is getting better. And when you play to your strengths, something that the Ravens was not doing these first 2 weeks, when you play to your strengths, the game gets easier. And trust me, this is not the Derrick Henry of old, but this is still a good Derrick Henry. And I don't know if you noticed, but obviously a lot of it could have been the inefficiencies on the Dallas side, which we'll talk about in a second. But the game just looked easy for the Baltimore Ravens because they did what they're supposed to do. They played to their strengths. I'm not saying that playing to your strengths ultimately is going to get you a win every time. But what I'm saying is it helps you get there easier than trying to zig when everyone's zigging instead of doing your thing. The Baltimore Ravens can be a scary good team. If they if all their units play to their ability, and they play to the team plays the way that they are able to dominate and play. I understand that this is a pass-first league at this point, but the Baltimore Ravens have found success doing what they do best, and that is play smash-mouth football and run the ball. If they do that, they're going to be a dangerous team. I'm not going to look too far ahead because, week 3 just ended, but I am very interested. I think their biggest game to date was the Dallas Cowboys as far as this season, but I'm really interested to see how they fare next week against the Buffalo Bills. Because you have one team that's 3-0 and another team that is 1-2, but this win felt different. This win felt like, all right, we're getting back on the. Don't worry about the blown lead. That's just what the Baltimore Ravens do. But essentially, they dominated. Speaking of dominated, there's always another side to that coin. There's always another side to a coin. We have to talk about the Dallas Cowboys for a second. Because, again, 28-25 doesn't tell the whole story. Dak Prescott throwing for 379 yards doesn't tell the whole story. What I'm about to say fits other teams more than the Dallas Cowboys. What I'm about to say is a perfect explanation to other teams more than the Dallas Cowboys. There is something missing with this Cowboys team. And that something is going, if it doesn't get addressed, that something is going, and it's going to prevent them from getting to their ultimate goal. Let's talk about what we know about the Dallas Cowboys. They're led by Dak Prescott, who is a fantastic regular season quarterback. They have a top 5, you can argue, wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. They have a top 5 defensive player in the league in Micah Parsons. And they have Trayvon Diggs. Even though he's not playing right now, they have DeRon Bland, who I think has the most pick sixes in a season in NFL history last year. Demarcus Lawrence, I'm sorry. But the biggest issue with the Cowboys is they didn't do what they were supposed to do when they were supposed to do it. And now it's coming back to bite them. What do I mean by that? Obviously, you can. I say, there it goes. I'm doing the obviously again. I promise you guys, I'm working on it. It's very hard to improve during the season. It's very hard to bring somebody that is looked at to be important. It's very hard to bring them mid-season because they have to learn the offense or learn the defense. They have to get acquainted. They have to figure things out. The time to do that mainly is the offseason. I know the Ravens just got Yannick Njoku, I think his name is. I forgot his. I know who it is, but and wow, he's not the best pass defender. They can rush the passer. But what was the criticism that we had for the Dallas Cowboys this entire offseason? It was during the draft. It was after the draft. It was when you saw teams like the Eagles making moves and you saw teams like the Kansas City Chiefs make moves. We said, I didn't understand why the Dallas Cowboys were resting on their laurels. I didn't understand why the Dallas Cowboys was having this mindset of let's just run it back. P.S. and it kind of fits here as well. I never understand that. Maybe I understand if you're a team that was close to the finish line or a team that was close to your ultimate goal. Like, I understand completely, even though they did find a way to bring in some pieces. I understand someone like the San Francisco 49ers. If they were like, you know what, let's just run it back. They were overtime plays away from winning the Super Bowl. I understand that. Hell, I even understand the Kansas City Chiefs say, you know what, let's run it back. They just won back-to-back Super Bowls. I would even understand if the Baltimore Ravens said, you know what, let's run it back. They were in the AFC Championship, and a lot of people thought they were the better team, including myself. I completely understand if the Detroit Lions say, yo, let's run it back. We were in the NFC Championship. We had a lead. We should have won the game. I will never understand why a team that wasn't necessarily close, that lost in the first round or the wild card, be like, let's run it back. And that is the mindset that it looked like the Dallas Cowboys had. While, might I add, losing pieces. You lost Dan Quinn. You lost a bunch of pieces on the defensive side of the ball. You lost a bunch of pieces on the offensive side of the ball. You just kept losing pieces, but it felt like they kept having that mindset of let's just run it back because they weren't making much moves. Well, what do you know? 3 weeks in, and you beat the Cleveland Browns, which we have, and we'll talk about shortly, which we've realized has a lot more problems than initially thought. You get smoked by the Saints, and you essentially get smoked, even though they kind of took their foot off the gas, and you could have won at the end. You pretty much got smoked by the Baltimore Ravens. The issues and the thing about running it back is usually when you run it back and you don't make much moves and you don't improve, the issues that you had a year ago, 9 times out of 10 are the same issues that you have. Well, what do you know? Last year, the Dallas Cowboys struggled mightily with the running game. And what do you know? Over these last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, they have struggled mightily with the run. Oh my gosh, what a coincidence, or what a shocker. Ezekiel Elliott is not the guy is not the workhorse that he's been most of his career. What do you mean? Oh shoot, Dalvin Cook. There's a reason why teams haven't really wanted to touch him, and I'm not saying he's not a bad player. What I'm saying is he's not the Dalvin Cook that we saw in Minnesota. That's an issue. Last year, especially towards the end, Dallas had a tough time, even with Micah Parsons, even with DeMarcus Lawrence. They had a tough time stopping the run. Well, what do you know? Derrick Henry ran for 151 yards. If I'm not mistaken, Alvin Kamara a week ago damn near ran for 150-something yards. In fact, I'm going to look that up. Just so I don't. Alvin Kamara ran for 115 yards. I apologize. I was off. But he ran for over 100 yards. Do you know how, especially in today's NFL, when teams like the Saints in week 2 like to pass the ball a lot. And you have what a lot of people think is a generational defensive player in Micah Parsons, and you're giving up 151 yards to a Derrick Henry who probably doesn't have over 100 yards on the year before coming into week 3. The issue and the thing about running it back is when you run it back, I don't understand, again, unless you were extremely close to your final goal, I don't understand what you expect would happen differently, especially when everyone around you is getting better. Dallas is a very talented team. You have Jake Ferguson, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. It's a good team. But you're starting you're starting to see what happens when you rest on your laurels when everyone else tries to improve. You're getting left behind. I'm not saying Dallas isn't going to win a game. Dallas is going to be good. Hell, they may even win the division. But what you saw is a team that had holes last year that didn't really address any of those holes, thinking that things are going to change. Baltimore, again, I understand that it doesn't look like it because it was 28-25, but Baltimore smoked Dallas. It was over at halftime, which is why, and there's a lot of factors that went into Dallas coming back. Baltimore there was a bunch of 3-and-outs because I think they had a Zay Flowers botched kickoff. Justin Tuck again for another week missed a kick. It's going to be interesting how both of these teams fare towards the end of for the rest of the year, because both of them have the same exact ideas about how their season should end. Both have aspirations of Super Bowls. And it feels like one team is a lot closer because while their record doesn't reflect it, they weren't using the open notes that they were supposed to be using. They were trying to do it on the backs of we're not gonna use our prized off-season acquisition here. You have another team who can be very good, but has holes that they've had now for years. And I don't understand how they think those holes are going to be filled when they didn't do it this offseason. And now when you're in the midst of season, you're not getting, there are free agents obviously, but you're not getting, in my opinion, a game changer, which you could have got. Oh, that's another thing. Jerry Jones said that he couldn't afford Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's making like $9 million a year, which is for 2 years, I think, which is like nothing for the running back position. This is the same Jerry Jones that just paid CeeDee Lamb, that just paid Dak Prescott, and that's going to have to pay Michael Parsons. This is the same. This is the same Jerry Jones that pretty much said he'll pull out the Brinks truck if it means that they have a good shot of winning a Super Bowl. Well, what do you know? Derrick Henry looked incredible against y'all, and Dallas still doesn't have a run game, so who knows? But shouts out to the Baltimore Ravens for beating the Dallas Cowboys 28-25. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.